Welcome to the Owner to Owner podcast. I'm Michael Kerr, your host, and I'm also the founder of Kerr Capital, where for 22 years now I've worked alongside business owners. Owner to Owner is a business podcast to empower the owners of Australia's small and medium enterprises. Forget the slick stories of tech titans and unicorns. At Owner to Owner we get raw and we get real. Every Owner to Owner episode is a personal conversation with another business owner just like you. We explore the everyday struggles they face and the different pathways they tread to success. Practical advice and plenty of one percenters for better returns, less stress and more enjoyment. You'll find grit, laughs, maybe a few tears and some hard-won lessons only available from others who've been where you are, whatever your stage of ownership. Every owner has a compelling story to share, so join us to listen and to learn. There is a circular economy, and there's this other circular economy that I've been fascinated with for some time. It's full of artists, creators, skilled tradespeople, odd jobbers, self-employed people, all business owners, micro or small business owners. They're people that have figured out how to keep earning a living while in the Aussie vernacular doing a lap, staying on the road, being independent, blending business, travel, staying in control of how they work. So my guests today are indie folk duo JC and the Tree. They've spent quite a few years touring the country, building their own music business the DIY way, playing shows, booking the shows, doing demos, doing the accounting books, making the trade-offs that come with that freedom. Sounds pretty cool to me, but we're going to pressure test that. We'll dig into life on the road, the practicalities of combining work and travel, the ups and downs of doing it yourself, and what it really does take to run a small business from the road. So a big welcome, Jacinta and Jesse.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome. Let's get started with, I think, call it 3 years on the road. So for an indie folk duo, what does a day in the life, a day in the business look like for you both?
It varies a fair bit, actually. Some days are busier than others. Most of the time, we like to get in a little bit of exercise in the morning when we first wake up. We've noticed that sort of keeps our mental health in check, I guess. Being cooped up in a little van for long drives most days, a bit of exercise goes a long way. So we generally start our day with that. And then typically, if it's a gig day, we'll get on the road and normally drive a fair bit. Might have a couple of hours of driving. Then we'll get to a show, set up for an hour or so and do the show and pack down and all that. And sort of by the time we're finished, that's normally quite late at night. So that's kind of a typical gig day. And through the week, a lot of the time is taken up sort of driving and
just depends where we are. Like a lot of admin. I just sit on the laptop a lot. Yeah. So if we've got a lot of driving, Jesse pretty much drives all the time. He prefers driving. And then I just sit there in the passenger seat working away.
Yeah. So the guitars and the violin are in the back and you're doing, the stuff that it takes to make sure you're on track to get where you need to go and that, you've got all the right accommodation. And
the playing music part is actually a pretty small part of what we do.
But the short answer is there's just really no routine. Like we'll go weeks without probably doing proper exercise just because we're so tired. Like towards the end of last year, we had a lot of gigs and basically we'd try to drive earlier and then just had a nap before the show because we were so tired and then set up and do the show. Like on gig days, we'd try and fit in a nap. Yeah, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do and that's that. Yeah. And admin will fall behind and practice will fall behind and create time sadly can be quite low on the priority list because there's no one emailing you going, make sure you write today or this today.
Yeah, and this is part of the context I want to get. Like outside looking at a lot of music fans, you play in a lot of places around the country and you've got to get up for that show. I caught you in Point Lonsdale and there were 30 people in the new hall and it was magnificent. You could probably play to, much bigger crowds, but, same energy is needed for you guys just to, get up and do the thing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And it's also like that was our first time in that area. So it does really vary. Like sometimes we'll play a show in like an area we've played before or a festival and there's lots of people and sometimes it's just small, but it's still beautiful. It's 30 people that are listening.
I actually quite enjoy the small shows, to be honest.
Yeah.
People's actually quite nice. I like the big ones too, but they've all got their quirks.
I mean, and it's like, we'll get to this, but, I'm imagining that, the business of your music business is to get yourself out to as wide a possible audience. So you can't have big numbers every night. And it's like that happened to be new the first time you've played. So sure, you've gotten some fans. The contrast, as I understood it, is the impetus to go out on the road. Prior to that, you were both working, you were living somewhere, wherever it was, working and then doing gigs. And then was there a moment where you said, want to do more gigs in more places and maybe doing the jobs you were doing, we could do without that for a few years if we can do the trade-off between travel, losing your income from a job, but playing more gigs. And how did that work for you?
Yeah, well, it was kind of an interesting one, I feel. We were sort of working our full-time jobs and then we were gigging. So we would go, I was managing a little machine shop at the time or working at a little machine shop, and Jacinta was working up in Mullaney at a shop, and we were working Monday to Friday. I would finish work early on the Friday and we would pack our van on Thursday night with all of our music gear. And then I would finish work early on Friday and then would leave and go to a venue Friday afternoon, play Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, and then we'd go back to our day jobs. And we did that for about a year and a half or maybe even 2 years. And it sort of got to a point where, for one, we were burnt out, but it also happened to be at the same time that COVID had sort of happened and our rent, we were living on the Sunshine Coast, so we were renting a place, but we also had our van. We had kitted out, and our rent had gone up to, it was like close to $1,000 a week. It was quite expensive where we were living. And also the job that I had been working, basically the next contract that came up with them was for me to go work away again, which I didn't really want to do. And it would have meant that it was basically got to a point where we had to either just go for it and just go play music, or sort of I would go work away and we'd stay living at this place. But to be honest, without the rent of $1,000 a week or whatever, it sort of ended up working out sort of same, or if not, probably a better financial choice to just go have a go at the music for a little while.
Yeah. I would like to add that it had been in the plans for a long time. We actually were going to do it right when COVID started. That was sort of originally when we were going to. And I think to even go further, like for me, back when I was learning violin and considering it as a career, I always thought it was basically impossible to make a living out of it. So I had given up on it. And then I had an opportunity when I was 19 and I played in a band that was basically doing the same thing, like doing it very DIY. And it made me realize it's possible. And around the time where we were working full time and doing these shows on the weekends, we were also doing little stints away. So we'd sort of had a few trial runs on the road, like where we'd do a few weeks at a time. And we'd sort of started making friends that were doing this already. And I think having seen it happen already around you and seeing that it's possible was, for me personally, quite like a big thing to know that it was possible, instead of just taking this leap of faith without knowing that there was somebody already doing it and how it works and, people you could call upon if you had any issues. You know what I mean? It was like I could see that it works, and it's just a matter of taking that leap and doing it.
Yeah, inspiration, you can see that somebody else that you admire or know, respect, has done it. So it's a fantastic fillip to your spirit to go do it. But also, you've ditched the $1,000 a week, replace it with was it a Mercedes van or whatever it is?
They're a bit smaller, $1,000 a week, I can tell you that.
Yeah, that's right. So, like the biggest cost that just about all Australians have is housing. And then it's that trade-off of probably a great place to live, but also the burning desire to actually do more than a Friday night or a Saturday night gig and see how far your music can go. Was that a driver?
Yeah, I guess it's just, and things, flowed more and more, like gigs started coming in more and more, and festivals like further and further away. So it was like, just sort of seemed like the natural progression. And I sort of had always said to Jesse, let's do this. And it was just a matter of when. So when the time came, it was just perfect. And we had everything ready, I guess, by putting it off those couple of years through COVID. It was probably a lot better, like when we did it.
Smooth transition, really, because we were kind of ready ready for it. Had the van, had all of our stuff.
Yeah.
We'd also done our first album through COVID. So we had albums and merch and stuff like this that doing gigs and working the full-time job really helped out to set us up to be able to, I guess, paid for this business.
It is very true. Like there was a lot of money that we spent that we worked really hard for in our jobs that we just spent on the music, like on recording the album, on printing the CDs, the vinyls. That's all so expensive. And we're starting to see now, we're like, all right, we've got to make that same money for the next album with our music only.
Yeah. But then it enabled you to travel a lot further as well because, you had to be back for work Monday morning.
For sure, exactly.
And so and this is part of, this, the lap, the mythology of the lap that I think has been probably more associated with, with boomers who have retired and are gone with their van, and it's fantastic. But what I'm really excited about and is the possibility for people to do that while they're still blending, making a living. And I draw a distinction there because, working for a job when you've got music, you guys have got music that is probably a higher calling for you, and you want to make sure that you give it every possible chance. Leave behind the expensive rent, get on the road. It must have been exciting the first time you actually took off in the van.
It really was. Yeah, it was, especially because we ended up renting a massive house. It was just what happened at the beginning of COVID because we ended up getting the house right at the beginning when rent owners were really desperate that they wanted a renter with their job still, and we both still had our jobs anyway. So they kind of ended up hounding us. So we're just like, oh, screw it, we'll just go to this house. But it was big and it was on a dirt road. So it was the cleaning and the maintenance just was overwhelming. And then I remember, for me personally, when I left, it was like so good to not have to worry about that. Just a tiny space to worry about cleaning.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
We've got rid of so much stuff, that we'd accumulated, youth and stuff like that. And we just got rid of it all. So it's
cleansing.
It was very manageable. Feels very manageable being
the Swedish death cleaning, the massive cleanup to ditch surplus things and not store too much. So you're paying to store stuff you don't really need. Yeah, Jesse, you I think I remember one of your stories at the gig. You came out of a family business, right?
Yeah.
The machine shop was...
So I did my apprenticeship with my family business with my dad. He was a machinist. And then after that, I sort of left there and worked for a heap of different companies and did a few other things. So that wasn't the business that I left when we came on the road, but that was sort of where I did my trade.
Yeah. I mean, I noticed these beautiful guitars up on acoustic guitars and I was going, they look pretty special and unique, but that some of your trade or your experience was in making things, right? And
so I worked in a machine shop, so I guess reading drawings and, working to a tight tolerance and stuff, that was all part of growing up, I guess, in the machine shop. So I was pretty comfortable with that sort of thing. Having said that, everything I used to do was with steel, being a machinist. So transferring those skills into timber, that was sort of where I had to learn a heap of new skills, obviously how timber reacts and stuff like that, and different types of timber and tones and that sort of thing. But I found it really interesting, to be honest. And it was kind of a cool way that I could use those skills, but in my own way, I guess.
Jacinta, how did you end up with bookkeeping and?
I was actually top of my maths class in high school. I didn't mind it actually.
Yeah.
I was considering doing architecture because I liked design and being creative, but I also didn't mind maths. I know it sounds really weird. So I do our tax. I've actually for years I did our own tax without even an accountant. Last year I decided to get one, but just to do the final thing through. I do counts and I have spreadsheets for our calendars, and Jesse likes to show off our spreadsheets.
Nice, yeah.
Last 4 years.
That must mean everything's under control.
Like to be highly organized, and I think that's just been very helpful because you have to be. Not every musician is highly organized. I mean, some would just kind of do their thing and are very creative and just sort of go with the flow. And honestly, I watch a lot of musicians like that, and it works for them. But we are definitely like run. I wouldn't say it's not like a tight ship, but we just know what's going on and plan it out. I get a bit gig being crazy sometimes, and I'm really trying to learn to really prioritize time off and not.
Jacinta maxed out our maximum email thing the other day, booking a European tour, which is 500 emails, I will say.
In one day.
That happened. Yeah, you might get on some spam filters with that level.
True, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, I didn't do it. Yeah. Anyway,
the great thing, it's true of small business across the board, that somebody in a business, in a team, where they're making things, or they're doing a service or creating something. I kind of had a bit of a chuckle, but with the bookwork and stuff is so vitally important because it just otherwise it can become and stress that's unnecessary. And if you're going to build a business and stay on top of your numbers, which we all need to do, it's just so maybe not as glamorous as some things, but it's certainly vital. So if you had to talk about your own economics, not at the dollar level, but how does your breakup of income as a duo, like you get paid to play, you sell some records, sell some merch. What are the sort of lines?
Well, top earner would be gig pay.
Yeah.
And then I would say close second would be merchandise sales.
Seems to be slowly
creeping
up.
It was always gig pay, and now merchandise sales is coming closer. I wouldn't say it's overtaken it though. And then under that, things like, you get money from streaming, but really it's down a lot. I mean, that's pretty much all our income, I'd say, is those two things. Like there's small bits and pieces that come through. I'm trying to think nothing really else other than streaming, and I do a bit of recording. So royalty payment.
Oh, yeah.
That's a nice, but I mean, that's kind of like from playing, I guess. It's, so you have to log every gig, like the set that you did. You don't have to do it at every gig. Like I just every now and then, every few months, some musos do it just once a year. They'll just log all their set lists that they did for every gig.
Yeah.
Which is time consuming. But you get, if you do a lot of gigs, it can be a nice sum at the end, but probably you'll definitely be sitting under merchandise. And I do some recordings on the violin for other artists, and sometimes jump up with other artists for shows. That's sometimes a nice little bit to help with things. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, but the formula really is more gigs, more money, because you sell a lot of your merch at the gigs as well, as opposed to online.
We had a lot of gigs last year, and we're trying to, as I said, prioritize a bit of time off. And obviously it would be nice to get to a point where probably our streaming numbers could be improved a lot, which is a lot of work to get that. But it would be nice to get, an income that's just sort of coming through without us really having to work with the products we've already put out. So, also I'm actually about to talk to a sync agent, which is basically getting music into movies and TV shows. So that'll be, and I feel like I'm hoping that our music will do well. A lot of people say they could see it in TV shows and music. It's got a bit of a cinematic style to the songs. Hoping that this year, that's our goal, is to maybe start trying to introduce more, what do you call it, income streams that are like
passive, Yeah, which is you've recorded material, and I really do want to get into the corporatization or the streaming thing, but we will get to that. But so going on the road has you've kept up a pretty good pace by the sounds. Done more gigs. It is gig season, right, at the moment.
I feel like it's sorry, go on. I was just going to say, I feel like it's gig season in Australia quite a lot of the year, depending on where you go. And we did find December last year, like December and maybe January, not ideal. Probably.
Right. So just before we go to the streaming services and generally, I was interested in two things. One is how you see the live music scene, because you're fundamentally a part of that. And then before I forget, who were some of your DIY musician heroes or models? They're doing it really well.
We get to see a particularly nice part of the live music scene, I think, especially playing our own music, sort of playing original music and stuff. Yeah, sometimes like the show that you were at, the crowds aren't like the hugest, but it's all kind of nice people that are there to see music. So we see a really beautiful part of it. So I think we're pretty fortunate and thankful that we're in that sort of scene. I can't speak because I'm not sure what it's like doing a typical kind of maybe pub cover kind of scene.
Yeah.
That's maybe...
It's a different world. And even just like being in like the original folk scene, like the other musicians that we meet and have been friends with and work with are just all so supportive, and the community is really nice.
So as far as the music scene that we get to see, it's really nice. It's and that's a really important part for me too, because I think leaving the trade, that was the main thing that I wanted was I wanted the music and everything to go well, but I wanted to choose who 80% of my life with was the people that I'm generally working with. So we slotted into that sense.
Yeah, so
Quite great.
camaraderie and as you say, you have some long drives and it's you two, and then you get to somewhere and there's like you talked about, you've got to get out of the bubble of and a mental health perspective just to kind of live life and engage and have fun.
I was just going to say, we've got lots of music friends that are on the road all the time, so we're always crossing paths, and I think we all sort of keep each other in check as far as mental health and stuff like that goes. We get to spend time, talk. A lot of the other musicians are single people as well that don't have somebody else, so it's like for them to catch up, I think, have a chat about what they've been going through or whatever it may be.
Yeah,
we all sort of try and support each other in that sort of sense.
Yeah, that's particularly because you would bump into them often, and you need that camaraderie. So how many years is it since you ditched the rental and the jobs? Is
pretty much exactly 3 years, like 3 years and a couple of months. It was December 3 years ago.
Have you counted how many kilometres you've done?
1,000, and we sold it with 220.
So about 156.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, and we did the whole lap with that. Yeah, I guess in some ways it's like, for people who fly in, fly out or do long drives for work, I actually compared it to an old job of his that he had where he had to drive out to a mine.
Oh, that was my old job.
Well, anyway, it was the year we did the lap, I remember going, let's just see. And it was actually not that much more. It was maybe 10,000 more or something. Or maybe
but you've gone far and wide.
10,000 more. It was like, sorry, 1,000 more. Sorry.
But you've seen a lot of Australia rather than going commuting.
Exactly.
This is what I'm really intrigued about, and there's a raging debate going on in Victoria about work from home, and which is a whole other subject matter. But for independent, self-employed businesses, trap them. So just taking a holiday can be a real challenge, let alone this idea that you could actually maybe try running your business from the road for a period of time. But, it's something that to make your business more resilient without you should be a top priority. And I've done a reasonable amount of, particularly since COVID, and met some really interesting people, going across the Nullarbor, and fascinating what people, there's, got a mobile and get your hair cut, or you can get some car mechanic work done, or you can buy some educational resources for kids. And it's like quite marvellous, what people are continuing to do whilst getting around with homeschooling or on the road schooling with young ones. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We actually saw a guy the other day that had a massive truck thing that was all set up. They obviously lived in, and he had a big sign on the side, and he was a handyman, like a traveling handyman that would do rentals and fix up properties and stuff like that as he traveled. There you go.
Yeah, I think there's a bit like quid pro quo. You can trade fixing the plumbing for staying 3 nights. It's a wonderful.
I love a good swap.
Yeah, it's that community out there. I don't have any stats, but I think if most people would think it was probably more of a boomer thing going back a while now. It's parents with kids want to get their kids out and see the country, and then other small business owners doing what they want to do. Do you want to talk about streaming? Because I can see as a business, you've got, you keep doing more gigs, get paid, sell more merch, but maybe at some point in a few years' time, you think, maybe there's time where you might want to back off. I don't know. Call it passive, but it's not really, because you've created it, and if you can get more revenue from work that you've already invested your time and creativity in. So how does streaming work for you? And what's this? Are there things that you've got planned to ramp up the revenue coming out of that? Is it like SEO on a website where if you do invest in Google Ads, you can get more leads? I mean, that's a pretty simplified.
Look, I think it's true. We haven't invested a lot of advertising and stuff on trying to ramp up our streams. There is a lot of what you call playlist submissions, which we have done in the past, which you pay to do. and that's to get on your playlist on Spotify and all that. We play such a variety of music, so we've found it a bit tricky to really slot into really specific genres of like to know where to apply for on what playlist, if that makes sense. Because I've personally noticed like a drop in genuinely good playlists that will put you on, and actually for a length of time. So like now, even just compared to a few years ago, you used to be able to use 4 credits, maybe $1, and apply for a playlist that would usually put you on sometimes indefinitely, but at least for like half a year. And now they'll only put you on there for 3 to 4 weeks, and you'll get honestly not a lot of streams, and then it drops off, and that's that.
As far as business goes, it's pretty bad. It's a really bad investment. You could spend whatever. Say you spent $200 or $300 on playlist submissions and things like that. It would take what's the stream rate? It's like 0.03 of a cent,
it's
or
0.03 of a dollar.
0.03 of a dollar for one stream. And so you can put $100 worth of submissions in for a playlist to try and rise your streaming numbers. The chances are, if they put it in, they might only put it in there for a few days or whatever. Even if they put it in for a really long time, a lot of the people that you're able to put your submission in for, that they don't really have that bigger numbers themselves. So it never pays back. Our experience anyways.
You have to get to big
I think
numbers.
You're better off putting the money into advertising in other avenues with...
Yeah.
It's just hard.
They're kind of like an aggregator. They're saying we have a profile on the streaming services where people curate stuff and people will come that you won't necessarily run into, but we like you, so we think you'll go all right. Is that what they offer?
Yeah. So for Spotify and stuff like that, that is what they offer. But it's a hard one to find motivation on like a business level to push it, because you're kind of just throwing money away. Having said that, we're trying to go into like what you were saying, moving into sync, which means that is people putting your music forward to be a part of a movie or something. They might need a part that's, says whatever. It might be emotive or something like that, and the violin and all that will potentially be good for that, and that will pay out better. We kind of see Spotify and the streaming services almost like your resume, kind of, in a sense. It's like, it's good to have the numbers there, and it looks good when you're applying for a festival or something, because they'll go over and be like, these guys have got people listening to their music. But as far as the pay goes, it's quite low.
Like it can be good. Like we know artists that have done very well on Spotify and playlisting, and it can end up being quite a nice little income that they're getting. So don't get us wrong. It's definitely a possible thing. I feel like in our experience, we just haven't had that much success. We have put money in trying, and maybe we're just not good enough. Maybe people just don't like not enough people like our music, or whether it's just like I said with the finding the right playlists and knowing where to go as far as putting our money and finding the right people or playlists. Yeah, so we just personally haven't had a whole lot of luck with that. Most of our listeners, I think, have seen us, or maybe a few have come by online, but not a lot, I would say.
Yeah. It's
we don't really know, actually.
No, but
you actually can't know that.
Like call it what it is, like advertising or promotion. In business, in small business, lots of people waste lots of money because it seems plausible to spend $1,000 a month, and it'll take a while to build up. And
and there's this carrot at the end of the stick that once I start, it'll get better and better. And I think that's with playlisting and streams. But
Spotify, it's on the nose for some. It gets bagged by certain people. I've discovered some fantastic artists because I get to the end, I'm playing in something and I get to the end and it goes, well, you might like this. I still, but it's hard to put a value. Just as a fan, it's But so Bandcamp better for you because you don't get streaming, you just get sales.
Yeah, and I guess it's just not so many people doing the download thing anymore, which I think is, I don't know if you can stream on Bandcamp. That's a good question. I should know that. But I think you can listen a few times for free, and then I think you have to download. From what I understand, that was...
You can listen to 20 seconds or all the tracks or like...
Yeah, so... and then people download, but that they have to then be listening to music in a download-based system and app or whatever. So that's definitely a smaller percentage of people who are listening to music do that. So
Look, like the positive is that all these things, obviously it's easy to complain about not getting enough money or something like that from streaming, but the The plus side is that if you were to go back, say, 20 years or something, or 30 years and try and do this, you would probably need an agent or some sort of company to sign you, and then you're kind of under the thumb of them, and you don't really get to make your own choices. Where, the money for the streaming thing's not great, but it is an avenue where you can get your name out there and, try and get people to your shows, which I think is what we focus on the most, is maybe not so much numbers, but just trying to convert people to come to a live show so that we can try and, I think our music kind of conveys better there too.
Yeah, I think there's a mix of things that it's pretty hard to know exactly. If we all knew exactly what was the silver bullet, you'd drop everything else, but that's not how it is. You got to keep, do you see it as purely as a creative, like extending your creative possibilities, or do you see it in some part as a business?
I feel like personally for me, it's like, I don't know if you talk about driving force, all that, but I personally see it as like more of a lifestyle and a lifestyle choice. Like Jesse mentioned, it's really nice to be able to choose who we spend our time with, and being able to be around wholesome people who are supportive and encouraging and have that camaraderie. Obviously, being able to be creative and play and perform to people, and I personally have just always loved performing. That's been a really big passion of mine, I guess. So
it's definitely a lifestyle kind of decision, I think, but at the same time, that you need the business side of it to make all that happen too. In our experience, anyways, it can't just not look at that side of things. It just won't. They all kind of work together, I think.
Well, I was driving back from Melbourne earlier today, and I was listening to the ABC, which I listened to the news, and there was something about the arts courses and how, graduates are in photography and whatever else, jobs are just not there. And so I rang up. I was interested in the idea of how just the mindset, not trying to sound like a psychologist or like a business coach, but if you really want to become the finest photographer or work with pottery, I don't know, whatever it might be, some level of, if there's no jobs and you want to do it, well, you have to think differently. And one way to do that is to say, well, okay, it's important that I do this. So what else other than a job? Maybe it's not a full-on business, but maybe it is more, as you're kind of hinting at. It's at least you can blend making enough to do what you want to do. If not a fully fledged, I can flip the business in 5 years and retire. Hi there, just a short interruption and a message from Kerr Capital. Kerr Capital specialise in advising business owners who want to get sale ready, or, as is increasingly common, get approached out of the blue by a potential buyer. If this is you, I know there'll be plenty of big questions and a lot of uncertainty. We're expert at supporting owners in making significant personal and business decisions, and then helping create a really strong plan of action. If you want to find out more, contact us at the Kerr Capital website, and then we can book a 45-minute no-obligation discovery call. Now let's head back to the podcast.
We invest in expensive, speakers, mixing desks. We've just gone through getting a new mixing desk, and so we're constantly trying to make our sound better when we're live for our audience, and that's in itself it's a creative thing to do as well, but it's kind of
smart business.
It kind of works out both ways. It's a smart business choice to keep your gear, in good condition, not just throw it in the van and without cables or anything on it, because then if our gear is no good in a month or whatever, well, then that's a bad business choice, because then we're going to have to go spend another $3,000 on a desk or whatever that we might not have or whatever. I think there is actually a lot of business choices, and it is kind of not driven by that, but it's just a kind of lucky thing that the business choices are kind of linked in with the creative choices.
Well, I think it's...
I don't know if that made sense at all, but...
No, I think it does. It's like a lens. You can be, 100% creative and genius at what you do, but if no one's giving you money to live, then it's kind of in some large part on you to figure out, if I really want to do it, what have I got to do? So it does become more about, unless you've got benefactors or donors or whatever, the other choice is, well, treat it a bit like bring some of that business thinking and hustle, and you've got gigs booked out for 6 months so that you can feel like, well, I can invest now, I can buy some better gear, or now I can take that trip and
Yeah, it's true.
one gig to the next is not going to, I think you've met musicians that works for, and that's fantastic. But for others, maybe thinking about it differently. Have you been forced into choices, or is it just rolled along quite nicely?
Yeah, there's definitely.
I can say there's been shows we couldn't do because just physically we couldn't get there in time, or like logistically it just couldn't work out.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you mean? Or
no, I didn't ask the question really well. I was thinking more like something came up that might have even diverted you from music.
You've kind of been offered your old job back, which obviously pays well.
I've definitely been offered old jobs or actually we have been.
Is it a firm no, or is it a
I say yes.
Yeah.
We've talked about it. We've talked about having a stint, maybe going back to some other work for a time, but then
it was more just to stay still for a little while. At the end of last year, we had been traveling pretty heavily for close to 3 years or whatever it was, and just nonstop, to be honest, like just constant moving, which is amazing. Like, we're super grateful and that we can do that, but it was getting close to being a bit tiresome towards the end of last year.
Bit of burnout.
Yeah, but we ended up just taking Christmas off and taking some time back around the Sunshine Coast. And we were lucky enough to do a house sit actually for a couple of months there. And that was really nice just to be in one spot, and we sort of recharged the batteries. And
one sense that was, you probably gave up other opportunities to keep going and keep earning money. But in the interest of long-term personal well-being and physical well-being, to just tune out.
Yeah, we did think about it towards the end of last year. We're like, oh, well, what if we went back, like got some work or whatever? And then when we sort of crunched the numbers again, it was that same thing. Like if we were to rent, like it's a hard one, because then you get caught in that renting, say somewhere like on the Sunshine Coast, costs so much to rent that then you wouldn't be able to save up for, say, a house or something one day. So it actually kind of puts you into this other realm of kind of ticking backwards. We ended up sort of landing on just taking a little bit of a break and then keep on going with this avenue, because it actually could sort of lead, to...
Yeah. Those house sits are good, aren't they? Like short-term thing just to go to a different place and
Yeah, it's really good.
All right, I just wanted to close off with a couple. Other than songwriting, performing, what do you think have been the most important things, the skills you've needed to keep going for 3 years, which is a mighty fine effort?
You want to think of what you talk personally, I reckon?
With mine would obviously be the trade background. So I do all of our maintenance on our van, and I've built the van that we live in and stuff like that. So that's saved us a heap of money doing all that sort of thing. So it'd be the trade background for me.
And I think, as we spoke before, like having a good knowledge, basic knowledge of maths and just logistics, accounting, but just, I can type really fast. So for emails, that's great. I mean, it's I feel like that's a basic skill now, but some people I realize don't have that. And it really, just being very computer literate, I think, for festival applications, all that kind of thing. I mean, it's a basic thing now, but it's really needed. True.
Posters. We make all of our own posters,
design,
video, edit all of our own videos for promotional computer stuff.
A lot of computer stuff. But so I guess all that. And then I guess I learned
ads like that.
If you were to compare this to yourselves 10 years ago, those things have been less of a priority because you just want to go out and play gigs. Like now that you've got a bit of life experience, you realise you can blend in other skills and kind of sustain your music career.
10 years ago. 10 years ago, I was more in the roles of being like a session musician where I was along for a ride, like for the ride on a tour. So I got to watch the logistical leader or manager do what they do, be stressed, and everyone either hate them or just go, wins. And it's nice to be in. Now I have an understanding for that position, but also it's, I don't know why I'm talking rambling about this, but it's nice to be in a couple where it's like a lot even instead of a band. And so I guess I learned a lot back in those days, watching those people and learning from those people in that role. And now I'm sort of had to step up to that role, I guess, has been the journey.
That's you could call that life experience, but an interest in watching the business side of something, or the operational side, or the logistics side of seeing that firsthand stayed with you.
Actually, and definitely I find past roles of having to communicate with other businesses and stuff. in the fitting and turning sort of sense. Like just watching the way that sort of business ran has been interesting to kind of take over into.
Yeah, he's had like a couple of times I'd sort of get a bit upset with a message or something if there was any kind of issue with something. It's very rare, but it has happened a couple of times where something's happened, and he's very good at writing like a really
corporate response,
corporate amicable response that is not disrespectful, but, you know, firm and needed to be saying what is needed to be said kind of thing. Well, so that's definitely been a skill that I don't feel like I'm very great at. Well, like, you know, to a degree, like most times, but I'm fine to communicate. I do a lot of the communicating, but he's definitely...
Yeah, but it's partnering to some good cop, bad cop, something like that. It's been terrific talking to you both, and I've got my final question. But before then, I really have enjoyed it. It's, for me, it doesn't matter whether you're in the music industry or anything else. It's like what you're doing, I think, I'd like a lot more people to consider the possibilities. You saw some musicians early days that kind of were role models or mentors, and you know, there's this incredible big country to explore and all these great places to go. So yeah, making it work for 3 years is tops. So, but if you got recruited this is completely out of the blue, right? We want you to be the head of the small business department at the Australian government, and you rocked into Canberra next Monday and you put your feet under the cabinet desk. Do you have a couple of policy initiatives you think would be urgent to help us build a more resilient and vibrant small business sector, including the arts, including creatives, including everything else?
Geez, I mean, that's it. The first thing that comes to my mind is like obviously taxing, the GST, and I didn't really know how to make it into a policy, but I look around and I see it getting harder and harder and harder for the little guys and easier and easier and easier for the big guys, like the big businesses. And I just think it needs to be, I don't know how to word it into a policy. I did not pursue that career for a reason, so I'm not going to do the words justice. But
I'm not sure how to put it into policy, but I will say my dad had a small business his whole life, and he did all the right things, paid all the right taxes, did all the things by the book, which I really look up to him for. But at the same time, he's coming up to retire in the next 6 months sort of thing. And it is not easy for him to, I guess, like he has to think so hard, like one wrong move for him at the moment financially, and like even just doing the paperwork. And at his age where he hasn't had a life, he's a tradie, he hasn't had a life of tons of paperwork and stuff. And if he books up one bit of paperwork there, it can send him into, you know, living a pretty rough retirement, really, like, you know, not a very comfortable one. Yeah. And so there's him, and I've seen that part of it. But I've also worked for these other companies that are like these massive companies, and they have so many loopholes that they use, like by having offshore accounts and stuff like this, where the money just goes boom, boom, boom around here, and then they end up paying. And for example, I worked for a company and they had, you know, like a farm that didn't do anything, and it was just a huge tax write-off sort of thing. But they essentially end up paying no tax and making millions of dollars. So the first thing I would look into would be figuring out a way, I have no idea how to put a policy in place for this, but to try and hold companies that have huge profits, ridiculous profits, accountable, I guess, for the way they skirt around tax, and leveling the playing field a bit so that you can have small...
No, I agree totally. There's various, particularly Michael West, who's an investigative journalist, whatever, Michael West Media or something, but he publishes an annual list of tax cheats, right, which is all these big companies using other locations. And so, they're fine. Like, I reckon you just rock up on Monday and say, get it done, team, and we'd be all right. Anyway, don't have to have all the answers, but the spirit is rebalancing the economy between big and small, and then making sure that the big ones pay their fair share. So I'm all right with both of those. Thank you. You got plenty on. So Jacinta and Jesse, thanks. It was lovely to chat. Thank you for your time, and I wish you well for the next months on the road. Might see you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Please see you in Queenscliff.
So thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Owner to Owner and got some helpful advice. and maybe some more clarity on how to make your business work better for you. To subscribe or to listen back or to access any of the resources or information we talked about in this episode, head over to the website owner-to-owner-podcast.com.au, or you can search up Owner to Owner Podcast on your favourite pod player. If this episode or the podcast generally is really helpful, I'd love it if you could leave me a like, a rating or a review, but even more than that, I'd love it if you could share it with another business owner. There's a new episode out every couple of weeks. I'll catch you then.